over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the Afternoon Agenda on GB News with me, Alex Phillips. Now, this show is all about your opinion and mine. It's about discussing and debating things that are, or really should be, on your agenda. So, with that in mind, here's what we'll be covering today. A bad week gets worse for the Prime Minister as MPs question his leadership in the Commons. Is Boris Johnson's purple patch over? I'm also asking why we've let gang crime get out of control as we face the worst year of teenage murders in the capital. Sean Bailey joins me to give his thoughts. And successive governments have prioritised the family, from Margaret Thatcher's family values to Tony Blair's Sure Start centres and David Cameron's 30 hours free childcare. But critics say Boris Johnson's administration have failed to centre families in policy. Have we forgotten to put families first? Today, we really need to talk about family. That's the agenda for the next hour, but what's on yours? You can, of course, email me, gbnews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me @gbnews. But first, it's time for news headlines.
Good afternoon, I'm Tamsin Roberts. This is your news at 4 o'clock. Well, we can start with some breaking news this hour. Several migrants have reportedly died after their boat capsized trying to cross the English Channel. The French Interior Minister confirmed the deaths on social media. Well, we'll bring you more on this story as we get it. 2 police officers who shared crime scene photos describing the victims as dead birds have been sacked. Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman were killed in northwest London in June last year. PC Jamie Lewis and Dennis Jaffa, who strayed from the cordon to take photos, admitted posting them on WhatsApp. A tribunal found them guilty of gross misconduct, describing their actions as shameful. Boris Johnson has defended his social care plan after Labour accused him of creating a working-class dementia tax. Earlier this week, the government voted through plans to change how contributions are calculated towards an £86,000 limit for social care. During PMQs, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said the measures would impact the poorest hardest.
Working people are being asked to pay twice. During their working lives, they'll pay much more tax in national insurance, whilst those living off wealth are protected. And then when they retire, Mr. Speaker, they face having to sell their home when the wealthiest won't have to do so.
We're delivering for the working people of this country. We're delivering for the people of this country. And we're fixing the problems that they thought could never be fixed. We're doing the things that they thought were impossible.
The Commons Speaker has requested a review into whether MPs can take babies into the chamber. The move comes after Labour's Stella Creasy was told she can't take her 3-month-old son into the Commons. Sir Lindsay Hoyle stressed it's extremely important that parents can fully participate in parliamentary work. Stella Creasy said she welcomes the review and hopes the move makes parenting and politics possible to mix. The government is planning to pass a new law which will mean anyone who kills an emergency service worker while that worker is on duty will face a mandatory life sentence. Called Harper's Law, the government wants to change the legislation following a 2-year campaign by Lizzie Harper. She's the husband of PC Andrew Harper, who was killed while answering a late-night burglary call. 3 teenagers were cleared of murder but convicted of manslaughter. 2 men have been arrested after the body of a woman was found in the hunt for missing Plymouth teenager Bobby Ann McLeod. Devon and Cornwall police said that a body had been found during searches for the 18-year-old. Bobby Ann McLeod left her home in Liam around 6 p.m. on Saturday to meet friends in the city centre, but she never arrived. The police say the discovery of a body was weighing heavy on the people of Plymouth. One of the world's top footballers, France and Real Madrid forward Karim Benzema, has been convicted of trying to help blackmail a former international teammate. The 33-year-old has been given a one-year suspended jail term and ordered to pay a £63,000 fine. Prosecutors argued that he encouraged Mathieu Valbuena to pay a suspected group of blackmailers in order to keep a sex tape out of the public eye. Benzema wasn't in court but denies any wrongdoing and will appeal the verdict. The Home Office should be stripped of responsibility for the Windrush compensation scheme. That's according to a cross-party group of MPs. The Home Affairs Committee found what it says were a litany of flaws in the way the department operates. It's recommended the scheme is transferred to an independent organisation so claimants have more trust in it. As of the end of September, only 20% of the estimated 15,000 eligible claimants had applied, with only 5% receiving any compensation. And NASA has launched a spacecraft to try and crash into an asteroid in a bid to change its course. The target isn't a threat, but scientists hope if it's successful, they'll learn things which will help them stop hazardous asteroids in the future. The collision is looking to change the speed of the asteroid and therefore change its trajectory. The spacecraft is due to meet the asteroid next September. Well, that's all for now. I'll be back in half an hour. Now, though, it's back to the afternoon agenda.
You're watching the afternoon agenda, and we need to talk about the family. They F you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra, just for you. Thus go the opening lines of the famous Philip Larkin verse that ring true throughout the ages. Wherever you look, there is ample evidence that someone's upbringing can have lifelong negative effects, not only on themselves, but the wider community, even to the level of mass societal harm. Young boys wielding knives, as this year shapes up to be the worst for a decade for teenage murders. Absent fathers leading to hardened gangs swooping in to be the role models for lost and impressionable teens, perpetuating a destructive cycle from one generation to the next. The hypersexualization of everything, everywhere, deafening society with an overriding message that sexual liberty is the highest prize above and beyond respect, fidelity and monogamy. An MP curtly banned from bringing her baby into Parliament, a clear signal from the seat of our democracy to women that in the 21st century they still can't have it all, while the government ironically rolls out a Women to Win campaign to get more female representation in Parliament, and wonder what the problem is when women are still forced to choose between career and motherhood, as if deigning to propagate the human race is somehow a luxury choice. Traditional roles obliterated, leaving a cultural vacuum where nothing has taken their place, feeding a puerile gender war where the concept of staying together is almost laughable, and men and women are told their primary function is to seek pleasure over stability. A mental health epidemic of an exhausted, unstable and broken population, where individualism and identity have usurped the tried and tested model of the family unit. A country where more than a quarter of pregnancies end in termination. Yet, for the past decade, we've had a Conservative government who are supposed to put small c Conservative values at the heart of their policy. Well, hardly. Instead, we seem to have a Prime Minister allergic to commitment, both to women and his own manifesto, while his backbenchers decry the nanny state based upon perverse libertarian theories that are happy to sacrifice the sanctity of the family and the protection of minors at the altar of often male-centric adult freedoms. For however much parents try to protect their children in this day and age, their sons and daughters will be bombarded with pornography, extreme neoliberal ideologies in the classroom not fit for adolescent consumption. They'll have their young plastic minds corrupted by dollar-hungry, inhumane algorithms on social media that manipulate and distort their sense of security and their sense of self, and have it forced upon them that there is no such thing as normal, and in fact, So-called heteronormative values are somehow toxic. And you wonder why we have a social care crisis. To anybody with even a basic grasp of psychology, it is evident that the way you were brought up has the greatest effect on how you turn out. You do not need to have read Freud and Jung to comprehend that a happy family is vital to create robust, confident, and happy children. Yet, there is an engulfing silence in the 21st century when it comes to the promotion of traditional family values. Unless, of course, that family has been cobbled together in a test tube to be raised by sufferers of body dysphoria via a paid surrogate. That untested social experiment is, of course, de rigueur. So where do we turn to try to halt the runaway train plunging an entire generation, and invariably their children to come, into an unhinged blob of antisocial beasts? Who out there is standing up for the tried and tested model of hearth and home? And why has the concept of marriage and parenthood become so tragically unfashionable? Today, we really need to talk about the family. I am delighted to be joined in the studio by Head of Family Policy at the Centre for Social Justice, Christina O'Done. Christina, do you think that the 21st century has ushered in an era where what we might call the traditional values that our parents and our grandparents believed to be the things to hold society together and community together have essentially vanished?
Yes, and I loved the way you began with Philip Larkin, one of my favorite poems of all time, because, of course, he warns that parents can indeed F you up. But actually, what we've seen is a government that, when it comes to families, when it comes to married parents, is very, very shy of supporting parents do the very best they can. And the Centre for Social Justice has again and again done surveys to show that actually propping up the family is one of the most popular policy initiatives with the country as a whole. So why the reluctance? Well, the reluctance is they don't want to look like John Major's family values government, which did smack of hypocrisy because so many of the ministers were caught with their pants down whilst they were spouting family values. But the country as a whole is ready to hear about families and also to hear about marriage. I think that what we are seeing, especially since lockdown locked us in with our families and with our parents and with our children, what we're seeing is a resurgence of faith in the married structure. Here is an institution that keeps children from going into jail, children from trying drugs, children from becoming homeless, from being excluded from schools. The data is all there. Children of married parents fare much, much better in terms of short-term and long-term outcomes. What I'm interested in is how can we support these married structures better? They're popular, and yet we now have 51% of children born today being the children of married families, of married parents, but that's only 51%. 49% are of cohabiting parents. And the worry is, this is a trend that is accelerating. Cohabitation is overtaking marriage, and by 2030, we'll probably have more cohabiting parents than married parents. But actually, what we want is that marriage structure. Well, there are some tools in the government's toolbox to support marriage, and one of them is the married allowance. So what you can do is, right now we have a 10% transferable tax allowance. Let's boost it. Let's make it totally transferable, because then if you have a full transferable tax allowance, the married couple gets to keep back about $2,000 a year. But more importantly, by being able to transfer to one parent, what we can have is facilitate one parent to stay home and raise their child, which is a choice most fathers and mothers want for their children. you have a fantastic job. It's an amazing career. But most mothers, well, this is not the kind of job they have. And they are doing something very pedestrian, very routine. They would love to be able to have a little bit money kept back so that they could stay at home rather than go out and leave their child. Not everything is about parenting, parenting styles and parenting stay at home, of course. We are fighting an industry that is making billions every day. And that, unfortunately, is the porn industry. And you absolutely got it right before. We are normalizing pornography. We are ensuring that pornographers are teachers and parents because they bombard our children. There's PSHE in schools. Do you know how often that is? Like once a week? Whereas the social media is the constant companion of most of our children. So we have horrific stats. We know that one child in every primary school classroom will have received a message from a grown-up asking them to show themselves in an explicit way. That's one in every, that's scary. We know that more than half of under 16-year-olds have seen pornography. We know that 1 in 5 13 to 15-year-old girls have been asked to share a sexual image of themselves. When this is the norm, how can we expect girls to have a healthy body image? They think, I'm failing because I don't look like that porn star who I keep seeing and who my boyfriend is comparing me to, I am sure. We have boys who think gagging, kicking, violent behavior is just norm, and they're surprised when they end up on Everyone's Invited, looking like the bad guy. And talking about Everyone's Invited, this is a problem that goes across the social classes. It's not just in the bottom quintile, it's right across our society. And there is something that the government can do. They can grow some and just say age verification. There are, I hate to call them ethical pornographers, but there are pornography heads of the pornography industry who want to have age verification because they know that it just ethically is looking so bad. But they need to, they need to be strengthened. They need to be supported, and we need to have the brilliant culture minister, Cultural Secretary of State, Nadine Dorries, who has said that she cares about this. She's got to say to them, come into my office and let's talk. Let's make age verification the big focus of our work in the online harms bill, which is coming up the path.
I couldn't agree more. Christine, thank you so much for coming in, putting the C back into conservatism. It's been a delight to have you, and I agree with everything you say. Thank you so much. Well, joining me now is Research Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, Dr. Rakib Ehsan, who has written about the breakdown of the family unit. Rakib, where do you think we're going wrong societally? Why is there an increasing risk of family breakdown?
Well, I think that firstly, when we're looking at our social policy discussions, Alex, it's far too racialised. And all too often when equality and discrimination is discussed, there's a great deal of focus on racial identity. But when you're looking at various forms of social and economic disadvantage, family structure is almost left by the wayside. It's seen as unfashionable to talk about. For some people, they would rather focus on race, gender, when looking at those forms of disadvantage. And unfortunately, if people are looking at the Conservative Party, the current day Conservative Party, to restore the family unit at the heart of social policy, I think they'll be left bitterly disappointed.
And why is that? I mean, traditionally, the Conservatives have been the party of small c conservative values, just as Christina Doan was saying. But this current government seems to have reversed far away from that heritage. But why do you think that is? Why are they not standing up for things like old-fashioned values, the sanctity of the nuclear family and family units, and doing more to protect children and encourage men and women to stay together and provide secure households for their children?
Well, I think that quite often people talk about metropolitan identitarianism within the Labour Party. The reality of the matter is that it has a degree of influence within the Conservative Party as well. I thought it was very interesting, Alex, that you said that we have a Prime Minister who's allergic to commitment. And perhaps if small c Conservatives within the UK are looking for a Prime Minister who can really spearhead an ambitious social policy programme which prioritises the family unit and the institution of marriage, the reality of the matter is that the current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is not really the man, based on his own personal track record. He's not the man to really spearhead that programme of social reform. We've seen a great deal of research being done, which shows that family structure is strongly associated with school attainment, cognitive development, mental health, physical well-being, employment outcomes, criminal justice involvement. And I've personally done research which shows that childhood family stability, when controlling for a range of factors, is significantly associated with current day life satisfaction. So I would love to see family restored at the heart of social policy when it comes to this current government. I just feel that the characters we have in place, including the Prime Minister, perhaps they're a bit uncomfortable over their own personal track record to really spearhead that kind of reform.
Do you think this is because there's almost been a toxification of so-called heteronormative values that, you know, the old-fashioned man meets woman, they get married, they have children, and that is the fundamental best unit within which to bring up the next generation? And that, in fact, rather than be the nanny state, and we might need a nanny state right now, considering all the harms out there that parents can't control, the government seemed to be allergic to doing anything about pushing back against this dominating discourse.
I think that we have far too many people in policy making who are afraid of talking about factors which may be considered to be unfashionable within their own social circles. As you say, the family structure is so strongly associated with a range of social and economic outcomes, but perhaps people are more comfortable in terms of talking about race, racial identity as a vector of disadvantage. But that really does do the overall debate a fundamental disservice, because really what we should be looking at is what works. I would like to see greater support for communities at risk of family breakdown. And I'd like to see policies which prioritise the family unit, for example, strengthening family-friendly protections for British workers, flexible working arrangements which can allow parents to spend more time with their children. I think these are the kind of things that we really need to be talking about. But all too often, the equality debate in this country is led by what is considered to be fashionable as opposed to the facts. And that is a real shame.
Dr. Akibe-san, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your views on this crucial topic. A research fellow, of course, at the Henry Jackson Society. Well, joining me now is Head of Communications for the Fatherhood Institute, Dr. Jeremy Davis. Dr. Davis, do you think that we need to be focusing primarily on men in this debate and encouraging men to want to be fathers and want to stay by their women rather than constantly feeding their sexual appetites?
I think I see this as a question rooted in gender equality as much as anything. So I think we need to recognise that families come in all shapes and sizes, and there is very good evidence about the importance of father involvement in terms of children's outcomes. And outcomes for women too, and in terms of furthering gender equality. So unless we support men to share the caregiving and earning with their partners, I'm afraid we're doomed to continue along a very sort of traditional route where, you know, the focus on traditional family values, to me, I'm afraid, reads as women staying in the kitchen. So I think it's a very important shift that is required to in our family policy to focus on supporting men to do the job that they want to do as fathers, and not just to view them as providers in the family. That's yesterday's argument. Women want to be out there earning too. So we need to be helping both men and women to share those roles.
I couldn't agree more, but how do we go about doing that in the 21st century? Because it's all very well maybe government policy stepping in, but surely it's going to be drowned out by these sort of loud, shouting, screaming pop culture narratives, which is all about instant gratification. I can't remember the last time I, saw something on television or listened to a song that seemed to extol the virtues of parenthood.
I don't know. Maybe we watch different things. I see lots of men and women from all parts of society who I think want to make a success of parenthood. I think there are an awful lot of parents out there who are doing the best they can, often in very difficult circumstances, and with actually very little support. If you think about what support we provide men to do a good job of fatherhood, what is there? The parenting leave they have access to is pathetic and really, really badly. It's so badly paid that businesses often don't even get back from the government. There is an enormous gap between what men and women are entitled to in terms of maternity and paternity leave. It's like the biggest gap in the developed world. And we have maternity services and other family services that are almost entirely run by women and focused almost entirely on supporting women. I'm not criticising them for doing that, because obviously we need to support women as they have babies and especially in the early years. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be supporting dads too, because if we load all of this stuff onto women, where does that leave gender equality?
Where does it leave gender equality? Indeed. Thank you so much, Jeremy. That's Dr. Jeremy Davis, who's Head of Communications at the Fatherhood Institute, saying that we need to also help men be the best dads that they can be. Well, we're going to be continuing this conversation throughout the show, and I really want to know what you think on this critical issue. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can also tweet me @gbnews, and there's a poll up right now asking, has the government forgotten to prioritise the family? Now, after the break, is Boris Johnson's star waning after a series of missteps? After a tough afternoon for the PM in the Commons, we'll have some expert analysis for you. But first, it's the weather forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Whilst many of us will have a fine day on Thursday, come the end of the week, just flagging some very windy weather on the way, which will have a bit of snow mostly across northern hills. Some snow across the hills of northern Scotland overnight thanks to this area of low pressure. There's a weather front at the moment crossing the country. That will bring a colder day on Thursday, but also for many it will be a sunnier day as well. Still quite a bit of cloud around this evening over northern England and Wales, with a bit of patchy rain and turning damp across the far southwest of England too. The showers coming into northern Scotland, falling as hail and rain at low levels. Some snow on the hills, a bit of light snow possible on some of the higher routes across Scotland, and very windy tonight across northern Scotland also. Temperatures dropping down close to freezing, even in towns and cities, and certainly a pretty cold feel on Thursday morning, but generally a bright, fine, sunny start. There will still be wintry showers over northern Scotland and a few rain showers grazing the east coast of England, perhaps Pembrokeshire and Cornwall also. But for many, it's a fine and sunny day on Thursday, but it will be cold. Temperatures 6-7 degrees for most places, and add on that wind, it will feel colder still. But the strongest winds, the liveliest weather is yet to arrive. We'll start to see this rain pushing into Scotland, a bit of snow likely on the hills, and that then sinks its way slowly southwards on Thursday night and into Friday. That will continue to track southwards during Friday, so a spell of rain for most, but increasingly the winds starting to pick up and the showers turning more and more wintry across northern Scotland during Friday. It's this low that's bringing this lively weather, with the strongest winds across the north later on Friday, a Met Office yellow warning in place, and then a warning covering most of the UK for Saturday. So there will be some wet weather, there will be some snow, but at the moment the cause for concern is with the wind. Met Office warnings in place, potential for damaging gusts of wind on Friday and Saturday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
You're with the afternoon agenda on GB News. In a moment, Boris Johnson's week goes from bad to worst. But first, let's get a check on the news headlines.
Hello, I'm Tamsin Roberts. Here are the latest headlines. Well, we can start with some breaking news this hour. 24 bodies have been recovered after a boat carrying migrants capsized in the English Channel. A French mayor confirmed the death, saying 26 others were rescued. The accident comes as British authorities continue to intercept a growing number of migrant boats. The latest figures show more than 75,000 people have reached the UK this year, 3 times more than all of 2020. 2 police officers who shared crime scene photos describing the victims as dead birds have been sacked. Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman were killed in northwest London in June last year. PC Jamie Lewis and Dennis Jaffa, who strayed from the cordon to take the photos, admitted posting them on WhatsApp. A tribunal found them guilty of gross misconduct, describing their actions as shameful. Boris Johnson has defended his social care plan after Labour accused him of creating a working-class dementia tax. Earlier this week, the government voted through plans to change how contributions are calculated towards an £86,000 limit for social care. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the measures will impact the poorest people the hardest. And an extremely rare Christmas tree has been picked for Parliament. The outsized Sitka spruce, which reaches 42 feet, was selected from England's biggest forest. Kielder is one of the few places in the UK that can supply such tall trees. Even so, the chance of finding a tree this big is 1 in 150 million. Well, that's all for now. I'll be back with a full news update at the top of the hour.
Well, we can go back to the story about the 24 migrants who have lost their lives in the Channel today. GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White is live in Dover. Mark, what's the latest? I hear there have been more fatalities today.
Well, an appalling story that is emerging from the English Channel today. It's long been warned that we may be heading for a significant tragedy in the Channel as more and more of these boats try to make that perilous crossing to the UK. Well, this afternoon, not far from the port of Calais, reports that a migrant boat had got into difficulties. It was a local fishing vessel that radioed into the emergency services in France, first of all, to report that this boat was in difficulty and that there was around 20 migrants in the water. There was a full air and sea rescue that was then enacted. That involved, of course, the French maritime authorities, but also the British. They were asked to help in the efforts to rescue those who were in the water at that time. Now, reports are still coming in and a bit confused at this early stage, but French police are being quoted as saying that 5 migrants may have drowned. There are other reports being reported by the AFP news agency that as many as 20 migrants may have drowned, again quoting French police sources. Now, that may well be true, or it may well be that there was some confusion with the initial reports of 20 migrants in the water. Certainly the reports that came through to us suggested that the initial call was a boat that had overturned out there and that 20 people were in the water. So we add that line of caution that reports initially saying as many as 5 have died, but some reports suggesting it could be far higher than that. I was out in the English Channel today with GB News presenter Nigel Farage. We were on a boat out right into French waters, actually, waiting for what we knew would be another wave of migrant boats coming across today, because effectively it was, in Channel terms, a relatively calm day. It's never that calm in the Channel, but it had been quite a few days of really sort of negotiable conditions as far as small inflatable boats are concerned, because of the wind and the wave height out there. So things had calmed down a bit today, but when we went out at 6 o'clock this morning, it was still pretty rough out there. Because with the English Channel, what happens is that even though the winds die down, it takes quite a while for the swell and the waves that have been churned up through days of activity to die down, and it was certainly a choppy old English Channel when we were out in it, absolutely freezing cold as well, as you would imagine at this time of year. We came across a small boat with 22 people, mainly men, but also 2 women and a young child who said they were from Iraq and Iran. They had stopped their engine in the middle of the Channel and waited for rescue. So the skipper of our boat called the Coast Guard and they dispatched the Dover lifeboat out, because there was no border force vessels available to attend at that time. They were dealing with multiple other incidents across the English Channel today, from Dungeness right through to the Dover area as well. Dozens of migrant boats, we understand, intercepted again on both the British and the French side of the Channel. But as I say, on the day that we were out in the Channel, Nigel and I actually were talking on air about this, about the fact that it may only be a matter of time before there is a significant Channel tragedy because of the conditions that these people smugglers are pushing migrants out into the waters in increasingly rough conditions. We're both concerned that at some point there could be a significant loss of life. That seems to be playing out in the English Channel today with this very significant rescue operation and initial reports of at least 5 migrants who have drowned.
Brilliant reporting. Thank you for the update, Mark. Well, the Prime Minister didn't directly answer a question in the Commons today about whether he'd consider quitting before he's pushed out the door. The question came from SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford, who also described him as a Prime Minister floundering in failure. It comes after the MP sleaze scandal criticism over comes after the MEP sleaze scandal, criticism over a rollback on HS2 and, most recently, controversial changes to the cap on social care costs. Well, let's hear the Prime Minister responding to the SNP's Ian Blackford first.
What the people of this country want to hear is less talk about politics and politics, and they want to talk about what the government is doing for the people of Scotland. And what the Scottish government is doing for the people of Scotland, which isn't enough, Mr. Speaker. But what we will do, he talks about infrastructure investment, and I can tell him that if he will wait till till Friday or later this week, he's going to hear about what we're going to do with the Union Connectivity Review to ensure that the people of Scotland are served with the connections that they need, and which the Scottish Nationalist Party has totally failed to put in.
Well, this, of course, comes in the wake of Boris's speech yesterday at the CBI, where he had a bit of a struggle with his script.
People will have the confidence to stay nearer the place they grew up. And Tony, yesterday I went, as we all must, to Peppa Pig World. I don't know if you've been to Peppa Pig World. Who's been to? Hands up anybody who's been to Peppa Pig World. Not enough. I was a bit hazy what I would find at Peppa Pig World, but I loved it. And Peppa Pig World is very much my kind of place. It has very safe streets.
Well, let's talk to Ben Harris-Quinney, chairman of the Conservative think tank, the Bow Group. Ben, what do you make of Boris Johnson's position at the moment? I mean, people love that stuff, don't they, when he sort of goes on a little bit of a ramble and talks a bit offbeat?
Well, that's who he is. You know, what I find odd about the debate over the last few days is that there's some sense, is Boris okay? Has there been some change? This is what Boris has always been like, as far as I can recall, for the last 20 years. And that's what he does. But I think the problem is that there are now some pretty serious challenges amassing around Boris and amassing around the country. And people like a joke, but people also want to see serious leadership. And I think there has been little sign of that from Boris since he became Prime Minister. I don't think the issue people have, as he alluded to, is the politics of him talking about Peppa Pig or ruffling his papers. I think the issue people have is that he is not what he reported to be. And I think if you go back to the start of the 11 years of Conservative government that we had David Cameron coming in, promising to deal with the immigration influx that was the Blair years and get the national debt under control. Well, I think by the time all was said and done, the Conservative Party would have comfortably beaten Labour on the amount of immigrants that have come into this country, and they've almost tripled the national debt. Once Cameron's tenure elapsed, we had Theresa May, who was proposed as the next Margaret Thatcher, but was the opposite of Margaret Thatcher in my view. And again, that reset happened with Boris most recently. But I think the patience of the public are running out. We've heard many promises from the Conservative Party over the last 11 years. The Bow Group, the organisation I run, is a small C Conservative think tank, and frankly, I no longer consider, and I think most serious Conservatives in the country no longer consider the Conservative Party to be remotely conservative. The problem is the people that voted for them expect them to be.
Would you say that basically this is a government by soundbite, and somehow through this filter of presentation, even though it might lead to broken promises, we end up in a situation where any criticism or trying to hold the government to account based upon manifesto pledges they've left go by the wayside as this strange concept of Boris bashing?
Well, I think Boris is a phenomenal politician. I'm not a fan of his policies, but you can't deny that, especially coming, after a grey figure like Theresa May, he offers a lot of razzmatazz. But and I think when he won the largest Conservative majority since Thatcher, because he wrapped himself in the colours of Brexit, I think people's hopes were high. Mine weren't, because I knew who Boris was. I knew he was a consummate liberal, and one without a particularly good attention to detail or long-term planning. But there was certainly a honeymoon period where people thought he was the saviour. And I think things have started to turn against him. And it was ever thus. You can cast your mind back to the days of Teflon Tony, when people thought that Tony Blair was unimpeachable and indefatigable. And now I think, anything that Tony Blair touches withers on the vine. So that honeymoon period always ends. The difference with Boris is he was coming in off the back of two other failed Conservative prime ministers. And I think the public's patience was already wearing thin. And I think, quite frankly, the honeymoon is well and truly over.
Thank you so much, Ben. That's Ben Harris-Quinney, who's chairman of the Bow Group, saying that yet another Conservative government have forgotten what it means to be Conservative. Now, after the break, will this be the worst year for teenage murders in the capital? As gang crime worsens, we'll ask Sean Bailey what needs to happen to get a handle on the situation. You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
London is on track for the worst year for teenage murders on record. A Metropolitan Police unit has been tasked to target gang violence in North London, where the problem is at its worst. 27 teenagers have lost their lives so far in the capital in 2021, with the youngest victim just 14 years old. Well, joining me now is the chair of the London Assembly's Police and Crime Committee, Sean Bailey. Sean, what is going on? Why have we not got a handle on this?
Good afternoon. Let me just say this first to all of your listeners across the country who think this has nothing to do with them because they don't live in London. Crime in London now under Sadiq Khan has become so bad we're exporting it to other parts of the country. So it actually is a problem for the whole country. There's people who think this is an issue just for the black community, but only maybe 8 months ago, a good friend of mine, Yasna, her son was murdered and he is not black. This is an issue that we all need to face. And the first step is backing the police in London to do their job. The second piece is repairing some of the relationships that communities have, particularly the black community, don't have with the police, that needs to be done. And thirdly, we've got to make sure we maintain an authority for the police. Bashing the police recently has become a bit of a national sport. If we want the roads to be safe, we have to make sure we give the police some authority.
It used to be the Conservative Party mantra, didn't it? Tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. Do you think we're doing enough right now in 2021 to make sure that young kids aren't drawn into ganglands and criminal behaviours?
Firstly, I think it's the Labour Party who used that slogan, just to be clear. The other thing I would say is this. Earlier on in your show, you talked about family and you talked about the importance of family and absent fathers and all of those things. That social piece is very important to crime in general and gang crime in particular. But it's become unfashionable now to talk about absent fathers. It's become unfashionable to talk about, the family unit as many people would recognise it. Until we go back and have a real conversation about what it is to keep our children in school, discipline in school, family structure and all those things, we're going to have serious crime problems on the street. The second piece is, of course, we have to back the police to do their job. That's why I've been a big advocate of stop and search. And as a black man who's been stopped multiple times, it's a bit of a weird emotional place to say, actually, we need more stop and search, not less. And the other thing is we've got to do something about drug crime. One of the worst things that Sadiq Khan has done in London is suggest that he would legalise drugs. Anybody who knows anything about crime knows a huge amount of it, particularly gang crime, is driven by drugs. So we mustn't ease up on that.
But where is this current situation the responsibility of the Mayor of London, and where is it the responsibility of the current government? Because it seems to me that the Conservative Party seems to be reversing away from any accusation that they are the nanny state and not really focusing on ways in which we can start building a more cohesive society.
Let's be clear, this is the responsibility of everyone. And I know my particular beef is with Sadiq Khan because on 3 separate occasions, I've asked him, would he do something? Would he look into why the level of violence is so high in the black community? And he's told me no, point blank. That's where my particular beef comes from. And I would say to any police and crime commissioner in the country, even if you have no black community, what are you doing to look at the community that generates most of the violence and also suffers from it? That's key. When you talk about the government, there is things the government can do. They can make sure that we get our 20,000 extra police officers very, very quickly. They can do things like the current policing minister. He's looking at county lines. That's where we take criminals from big cities like London and they go out into the country and commit other crimes. He's looking at treating that like a business and disrupting that business, which has been very, very successful. We need to modernise. Criminals are modernising and we need to modernise. And to make sure I don't dodge your question, yes, the government have a very big footprint in this, but so do all police and crime commissioners up and down the country, including Sadiq Khan.
Sean, thank you ever so much, and thank you as well for observing that we are talking about the family today and making that very pertinent comment about absent fathers. Well, after the break, is social media addiction making us depressed? Is the Pope a Catholic? First, it's the weather forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Whilst many of us will have a fine day on Thursday, come the end of the week, just flagging some very windy weather on the way, which will have a bit of snow mostly across northern hills. Some snow across the hills of northern Scotland overnight, thanks to this area of low pressure. There's a weather front at the moment crossing the country. That will bring a colder day on Thursday, but also for many it will be a sunnier day as well. Still quite a bit of cloud around this evening over northern England and Wales, with a bit of patchy rain and turning damp across the far southwest of England too. The showers coming into northern Scotland, falling as hail and rain at low levels. Some snow on the hills, a bit of light snow possible on some of the higher routes across Scotland, and very windy tonight across northern Scotland also. Temperatures dropping down close to freezing, even in towns and cities, and certainly a pretty cold feel on Thursday morning, but generally a bright, fine, sunny start. There will still be wintry showers over northern Scotland and a few rain showers grazing the east coast of England, perhaps Pembrokeshire and Cornwall also. But for many, it's a fine and sunny day on Thursday, but it will be cold. Temperatures 6-7 degrees for most places, and add on that wind, it will feel colder still. But the strongest winds, the liveliest weather is yet to arrive. We'll start to see this rain pushing into Scotland, a bit of snow likely on the hills, and that then sinks its way slowly southwards on Thursday night and into Friday. That will continue to track southwards during Friday, so a spell of rain for most, but increasingly the winds starting to pick up and the showers turning more and more wintry across northern Scotland during Friday. It's this low that's bringing this lively weather, with the strongest winds across the north later on Friday, a Met Office yellow warning in place, and then a warning covering most of the UK for Saturday. So there will be some wet weather, there will be some snow, but at the moment the cause for concern is with the wind. Met Office warnings in place, potential for damaging gusts of wind on Friday and Saturday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. Is social media making you depressed? New research from Harvard University has linked using platforms like Facebook, TikTok and Snapchat with increased likelihood of depression. They asked more than 5,000 adults online to fill in regular surveys to gauge their mental health. They found that the likelihood of an increase in depression between surveys was 53% higher for Snapchat users, 42% higher for Facebook users and 39% higher for those on TikTok. Well, joining me now is child psychologist Amanda Gummer. TikTok and Snapchat are platforms that young people spend a lot of time on. Oh, I think we've actually lost her, so we're going to wait to see if we can re-establish that connection. Meanwhile, of course, you can let me know what you think on all the topics we're talking about today. gbviews@gbnews.uk, while we wait to see if we can reconnect. This is what you've been saying so far. Today, we're talking about family, of course, and I've been asking if we've forgotten to prioritise families. Fiona says no, no, no to Christina O'Done and her transferable marriage tax allowance. This is a regressive step. If there is to be a tax allowance, it should follow the child. All children, not just those who have married parents. We're going to come back to some of your views later. We can now reconnect with Dr. Amanda Gummer and pick up that conversation about social media again. Lovely to have you there. Thought we'd lost you forever then. It seems obvious, doesn't it, that this excessive consumption of social media really is causing a bout of mental health crises. But why is that?
I think there's a few things. One is the disparity between the perceived reality of life and the digital reality, if you like. So I don't think people are particularly honest on Facebook and on the social media platforms. So people get a filtered view of people's lives, which can lead to feelings of inadequacy with their own. So I think that's part of it. And the way we deal with that is to make sure that children from a very young age have a lot more digital literacy and understanding of the difference. So that's definitely one. And then I think the other thing is a lack of alternatives. And I think during lockdown, we haven't been able to get outside as much. We haven't been able to socialise as much. And that creates that sort of isolation and feeling down. And I don't know whether that compounds any impact that social media has. So I think we need to be careful that we're not just demonising social media. I think there are lots of things that have been going on in people's lives over the last year or two that have led to increased levels of depression. But I think the increased time that we've been spending on social media has been a poor substitute for real world interactions, but it's better than nothing. So I do think we need to make sure we've got that balanced approach. And I think just generally being able to socialise more and have that balanced approach to life is something that we want to be trying to regain where possible.
We even got as far as the Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen saying that leaked Facebook documents themselves show that these platforms fully understand the deleterious effect they're having on the psychology of young people. Is it now up to parents, as we can't seem to trust .com to deal with this problem, is it up to parents to really try and minimise the amount of exposure children are having on social media platforms?
I think parents definitely have a role to play in it, and I think the research that you were looking at is around adults as well as. I don't think it's focused particularly on children, but I think so parents for children's well-being definitely massive part to play, but so has education system, so has big tech and community as a whole. And what we need to be able to do is provide children with fun alternatives. Things like making sure that playgrounds are well equipped and making sure that there's lots of places for them to meet their friends and play outside safely. So within a close proximity to their own home, those kind of things, when they're not in existence, it makes it much harder to provide fun alternatives. So it's got to be a sort of whole society approach to this, I think.
Amanda, thank you ever so much. That's Amanda Gummer, who's a child psychologist, telling us about the dangers of social media and the effect it might have on depression. Now, you're watching the Afternoon Agenda, and there's lots more still to come. Welcome. If you've just joined me, I'm Alex Phillips, and this show isn't news as you know it, but discussion and debate on things that are or should be on your agenda. And still to come this hour, a baby ban in the Commons, as one MP is told not to bring her daughter into the chamber. So how do we attract more women into politics? And what sort of example does it set when so many organisations are trying to encourage women back to work after COVID? NASA is going to deliberately crash a spacecraft into an asteroid to try to divert its course. Do we need to be worried? And it may not be on the agenda of traditional news outlets, but we really need to talk about family. Have we forgotten to prioritise the importance of a stable family as a society and in government policy? That's the agenda for the next hour. What's on yours? Email me gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me @gbnews. But first, it's time for the news headlines with Tamsin.
Thanks very much, Alex. Here's your news at 5 o'clock. 24 bodies have been recovered after a boat carrying migrants capsized in the English Channel. A French mayor confirmed the deaths, saying 26 others were rescued. The accident comes as British authorities continue to intercept a growing number of migrant boats. The latest figures show more than 25,700 people have reached the UK this year, 3 times more than all of 2020. 2 police officers who shared crime scene photos describing the victims as dead birds have been sacked. Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman were killed in northwest London in June last year. PC Jamie Lewis and Dennis Jaffa, who strayed from the cordon to take photos, admitted posting them on WhatsApp. A tribunal found them guilty of gross misconduct, describing their actions as shameful. Boris Johnson has defended his social care plan after Labour accused him of creating a working-class dementia tax. Earlier this week, the government voted through plans to change how contributions are calculated towards an £86,000 limit for social care. During PMQs, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said the measures would impact the poorest hardest.
Working people are being asked to pay twice. During their working lives, they'll pay much more tax in national insurance, whilst those living off wealth are protected. And then when they retire, Mr. Speaker, they face having to sell their home when the wealthiest won't have to do so.
We're delivering for the working people of this country. We're delivering for the people of this country. And we're fixing the problems that they thought could never be fixed. We're doing the things that they thought were impossible.
The Commons Speaker has requested a review into whether MPs can take babies into the chamber. It comes after Labour's Stella Creasy was told she can't take her 3-month-old son into the Commons. Sir Lindsay Hoyle stressed it's extremely important that parents can fully participate in parliamentary work. Offenders who kill an emergency services worker while they're on duty will be given mandatory life jail sentences. The change in law follows a 2-year campaign by Lizzie Harper, whose husband, police officer Andrew, was killed while responding to a late-night burglary call. 3 teenagers were cleared of murder but convicted of manslaughter. One of the world's top footballers, France and Real Madrid forward Karim Benzema, has been convicted of trying to help blackmail a former international teammate. The 33-year-old has been given a 1-year suspended jail term and ordered to pay a £63,000 fine. Prosecutors argued that he encouraged Mathieu Valbuena to pay a suspected group of blackmailers in order to keep a sex tape out of the public eye. Benzema wasn't in court but denies any wrongdoing and will appeal the verdict. The Home Office should be stripped of responsibility for the Windrush compensation scheme. That's according to a cross-party group of MPs. The Home Affairs Committee found what it says were a litany of flaws in the way the department operates. It's recommended the scheme is transferred to an independent organisation so claimants have more trust in it. As of the end of September, only 20% of the estimated 15,000 eligible claimants had applied, with only 5% receiving any compensation. And NASA has launched a spacecraft to try and crash into an asteroid in a bid to change its course. The target isn't a threat, but scientists hope if it's successful, they'll learn things which will help them stop hazardous asteroids in the future. The collision is looking to change the speed of the asteroid and therefore change its trajectory. The spacecraft is due to meet the asteroid next September. Well, that's all for now. I'll bring you the latest headlines in half an hour. Until then, it's back to Alex and the afternoon agenda.
You're with the afternoon agenda on GB News with me, Alex Phillips, and today we're talking about the importance of family. Now, let me confess something. I'm messed up. Frankly, we all are in some way, largely due to the bumps in the road we have encountered during the course of our lives. Yet I can confidently point to the absence of my biological father since birth as having been a pretty strong determinant of who I turned out to be. Now, the pain of abandonment is something millions of people live with, and we can tell you how important it is to be brought up in a loving home with both parents, having been robbed of that. While 2.4 children were seen as the norm a few decades ago, today anything goes, with the erosion of the sanctity of the nuclear family coinciding with the greatest mental health crisis on record. Could they be connected? Surely it doesn't take a psychotherapist to tell you. A generation of broken homes will likely lead to generations of broken people and broken communities. Yet successive governments have done, well, next to nothing to put the most important societal structure, that of the family, at the heart of policy making. New office developments have breakout spaces with basketball hoops, beanbags and bars, but there's hardly a creche in sight. Children are being taught that heteronormative values, where a man and a woman join forces to raise children, are somehow neo-Nazi. Conscientious parenting is almost impossible when kids are being repetitively exposed to adult perversions and extreme ideologies outside the family home, with mums and dads left to pick up the slack where government has turned a blind eye to the causes of what is turning out to be a pretty messed up generation. It's the 21st century, and rather than having reached a stage where every child can be brought up in a safe and secure circumstance, instead, innovations in technology have been put towards advancing individualistic whims, while we seem to backslide into a pre-civilized bestial existence based on me, not we. Whatever happened to the concept of a happy home? It's time we started to put family first before it's too late. Joining me now is Dr. Samantha Callan, who is the co-founder and director of the Family Hubs Network. Tell us about the Family Hubs Network. What type of services are on offer and why are they needed?
Well, we've been saying for, 15 years that children's centres were great, but they were very focused on the early years of children's lives. And that's not the only time when the wheels can come off the family wagon. And we've had so many reports, so many social services departments saying we don't have enough preventive services to stop children coming into care, to ensure as many fathers are involved in their children's lives as possible. There's just a big gap. You get help in the early years, ideally, and then if things go really badly wrong, then perhaps your child's on a child protection plan. But what are we doing in the middle, and in the middle of childhood from, say, 5 to 18? So I think the government is beginning to move into this space. Finally, as I say, we've been saying that local family hubs, places where parents can go, where someone will have the answers and can help them find their own answers, are absolutely the next step on from children's centres, building on that infrastructure and improving it.
I mean, half of children today are not being brought up in the traditional married parents family units. Do you actually connect that with the poor state of the nation's mental health?
Completely. It is the number one predictor. Family breakdown is the number one predictor of teenage mental ill health. And the so many different research studies have found similar things, that when you're kind of the foundation of your life is ripped apart when your mum and dad split up. I mean, some children, about 15% of children, are born into homes where mum and dad aren't even living together, and they are especially 60% of those families by the age of 5. 60% of those children are no longer their mum and dad aren't together at all. So the level of family breakdown increases with the level of, if you like, the informality of the relationship and the level of explicit commitment. The higher that explicit commitment, that's why I think Christina was talking about marriage earlier, where couples have decided we're going to stay together, we're going to get married, we're going to kind of nail our colours to the mast, that tends to produce a more stable family unit. 90% of all of the couples who stay together until their children are 15 are married. Less than a fifth of all couples who have dependent children are cohabiting, but they account for 50% of all family breakdown. So it's not about being moralistic, it's about looking at the outcomes when people make a kind of quality decision from the outset to get together and stay together and then raise children within that context.
I mean, in the absence of talking about what people consider the 2.4 children typical model of parenting, there seems to be increasing focus on non-traditional family units. But how important is it for a child to have access to both mother and father?
Well, I mean, it's ideally you've come from, sperm and an egg. And knowing where half of your genetic material came from, both halves of your genetic material came from, is the best, because you understand why you are a certain way. You can see family traits, and you just get yourself a lot more. Now, obviously, I'm not saying all dads are brilliant, all mums are brilliant, they should all stay together, but the sense that it doesn't matter is equally ridiculous. We can't. Some parents die. Some parents become parents accidentally. So I'm not saying all parents should stay together for the sake of their children, but if we lose the concept that actually both parents matter, and then both sets of grandparents matter, and all that kind of social structure that comes from people knowing who they belong to. I remember a case about 10 years ago where the police said, instead of a simple genealogy, if you like, of who belonged to whom and who the grandparents were and who had brought which children into the world, they said it was a bramble genealogy across the whole family. There was you get situations where men father children with 23 different women. And I know this is sounding extreme, but if you don't know who your dad was, it is a huge risk factor for criminal behaviour. And again, studies, a Croydon study found that 2/3 of around 60 young people who were on the brink of crime or were committing crime, 2/3 of them didn't have a father around. So dads really matter.
Yeah, pretty damning statistics there. Thank you so much, Dr. Samantha Callan, co-founder and director of Family Hubs Network. Well, joining me now is Lead for Children in County Councils Network, Keith Glazer. And according to new analysis commissioned for the CCN, the number of children in care in England could reach almost 100,000 by 2025. The research suggests the figure would represent a 36% rise in a decade. This is a very stark projection, isn't it? I mean, what on earth is going on?
Well, the real problem is that we are, as you would expect, responsible for the most vulnerable, and the safety of children is the responsibility of local authorities once they come into care. And what we have been doing is finding that whether it's foster care or placements within children's homes are becoming more and more expensive. And so we are spending more money on the top end of looking after children in care, and not enough money on supporting families to look after their children and give them the support that would enable them to stay safely in their family. Because I think what you've proved earlier on is that with most children, family is the best place for them, and with more intervention, and hopefully the hubs will have go some way towards that. We will be able to keep more families together. Sometimes it's not going to happen, and we will need to be there to look after those very vulnerable people.
What do you see as the driving factors behind this decline in the traditional family unit?
I think just the way of life is some of it, but from our perspective, children numbers are not growing exponentially. It's also they are growing, but the main issue is the severe damage that have been done to children, and the fact that we've got lots more intensive work to do with children. And I think the other area that we need to spend a lot more time on is actually if a child comes into care, to look about getting them back into a family unit or their family unit if possible. I think the problem we have, and the reason the numbers are going up, is that it's not the fact that more people are coming in, it's just that less are leaving care.
An independent review of children's social care in England is currently underway. What sort of things are we looking to find from that?
Well, we were very pleased to have Josh McAllister at our conference earlier in the week. And I think it will prove that early intervention is something that is necessary. And it would also, I think, reinforce for the government that actually additional funding to enable us to do that early intervention work and to work with families before children are taken into care is both beneficial to the child, to the family, and to the public purse.
Thank you so much, Keith. That's Keith Glazer, who's the lead for children at the County Councils Network. Well, joining me next is the CEO of ParentKind, John Jolly. And John, you champion the role of parents in education. Now, why is that important?
Yeah, so what we do is make sure that we can give parents a voice in education, and we do that by asking them regularly in terms of a range of surveys around actually what they think about education and actually what's important to them.
And what do you see as the biggest challenges affecting family life at the moment?
So I think in education, what parents are telling us is that the mental health of their children is their number one concern. They're concerned about a whole range of issues, as you'd expect for children. School sort of like is writ large in relation to that. So they're worried about their children's exam anxiety. They're worried about issues of bullying. They're worried about actually the expectation increasingly on young people to be constantly on social media is a major concern for parents. Although what we are also seeing from about 30% of parents, concerns about more serious issues like cutting, like eating disorders. So parents are really worried about their children's mental health, and actually they want schools to actually be part of the solution to that.
Now, your latest Parent Voice report's just been published. Can you tell us about its key findings?
Yeah, so the key findings of that, as I've just said, is that parents really are hugely concerned about the impact of mental health and actually their children's poor mental health in many cases. And I said that's to do with issues that relate to schools, such as exam anxiety, but it's also around the wider context in which young people have to live these days, and the pressures from social media, bullying, issues of sort of sexual abuse or sort of sexual harassment within a school environment. So parents have a huge number of concerns around those issues, and really, the key driver from them in terms of what they're telling us is that they think schools are doing a really good job on a lot of these things, but they think more needs to be done to address the issues. They are very keen that actually mental health and actually support is higher up the curriculum to develop young people who are actually sort of happy, resilient, and actually have good mental health. And for whatever reason, that's not the experience that many young people have at the moment.
Yeah, and what a tragic statement that is. John Jolly, thank you so much for joining me, the CEO of Parentkind. They're talking about the importance of parents being involved in their children's education. Now, after the break, a ban on babies in the Commons chamber. Better for everyone or punitive to working mothers? First, it's the weather forecast.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Whilst many of us will have a fine day on Thursday, come the end of the week, just flagging some very windy weather on the way, which will have a bit of snow mostly across northern hills. Some snow across the hills of northern Scotland overnight, thanks to this area of low pressure. There's a weather front at the moment crossing the country. That will bring a colder day on Thursday, but also for many it will be a sunnier day as well. Still quite a bit of cloud around this evening over northern England and Wales, with a bit of patchy rain and turning damp across the far southwest of England too. The showers coming into northern Scotland, falling as hail and rain at low levels. Some snow on the hills, a bit of light snow possible on some of the higher routes across Scotland, and very windy tonight across northern Scotland also. Temperatures dropping down close to freezing, even in towns and cities, and certainly a pretty cold feel on Thursday morning, but generally a bright, fine, sunny start. There will still be wintry showers over northern Scotland and a few rain showers grazing the east coast of England, perhaps Pembrokeshire and Cornwall also. But for many, it's a fine and sunny day on Thursday, but it will be cold. Temperatures 6-7 degrees for most places, and add on that wind, it will feel colder still. But the strongest winds, the liveliest weather is yet to arrive. We'll start to see this rain pushing into Scotland, a bit of snow likely on the hills, and that then sinks its way slowly southwards on Thursday night and into Friday. That will continue to track southwards during Friday, so a spell of rain for most, but increasingly the winds starting to pick up and the showers turning more and more wintry across northern Scotland during Friday. It's this low that's bringing this lively weather, with the strongest winds across the north later on Friday, a Met Office yellow warning in place, and then a warning covering most of the UK for Saturday. So there will be some wet weather, there will be some snow, but at the moment the cause for concern is with the wind. Met Office warnings in place, potential for damaging gusts of wind on Friday and Saturday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
The Commons Speaker has requested a review into whether MPs can take babies into the chamber. The move comes after Labour's Stella Creasy was told she can't take her 3-month-old son into the Commons. Sir Lindsay Hoyle stressed it's extremely important that parents can fully participate in parliamentary work. Stella Creasy says she welcomes the review and hopes the move makes parenting and politics possible to mix. Join me now is the founder and CEO of maternity rights campaign group Pregnant, Then Screwed, Jolie Brearley. Jolie, there are people out there who say, well, look, Parliament has a creche. Why on earth does she actually need to take her baby into the chamber?
I mean, the baby was asleep. It was fast asleep on her chest. It wasn't being disruptive, and she needs to feed that baby regularly. It's only 14 weeks old. And so there seemed to be no issue to me as to why that was a problem for her to take the baby into chamber.
Why is it in the 21st century, when so many women have been encouraged to join the workforce, and so many indeed have, that still a quarter of pregnancies are ending in abortion? Because it seems women don't feel that they can have it both.
I mean, that's a devastating statistic, isn't it? And we know that women are alienated from the workforce when they have babies. 54,000 women a year lose their jobs for getting pregnant. 77% of working mums encounter some form of discrimination in the workplace. We are making impossible structures for women. So it is impossible for them to have a baby and hold down a career and earn an income. And in most households, you need 2 incomes to be able to survive, to be able to afford your rent or your mortgage and to put food on the table. And so it comes to a point for many women where they think, I can't afford to have this baby. And so that's not fair on the baby. That's not fair on me. And so tragically, you're finding that this very high number of women are having abortions as a result.
And why do you think we have a situation now where, with so many liberties being extolled, I mean, Stella Creasy brought a beautiful little mini human into the chamber, and I'm sure if it had started to cry, she would have walked out the chamber. But why in the 21st century are we still seemingly uncomfortable with the idea that a woman can multitask and do the most natural thing, have a baby, have the child with her to be able to mother and parent and take care of that child's every need and still get on and work?
I have no idea why we haven't got used to this fact. And there is tons of research that shows that once women have children and they take maternity leave, they become better employees. They become better at multitasking. They become better leaders. So there's lots of benefits to creating structures and systems that work for mothers. It has an economic benefit. It has a benefit for companies. And actually what we're seeing that during the pandemic, of course, with lockdown, there were lots of children at home because the schools and childcare facilities were closed and most of the work was being done by Zoom and video conferencing calls. And so lots of employees had to get used to this idea that people would be around their children while they were working. And we're seeing lots of positives from that. We're seeing lots of employers developing better family-friendly policies, being more flexible, thinking about the challenges that parents encounter when trying to work and raise a child. But on the flip side, we're also seeing this clamp down on any notion that you can even utter a word about your children at work. So it seems to be two extremes, and the employers that will survive and thrive are the ones that are going to be more flexible and are going to adapt their workplaces to be more modern.
I mean, everybody knows babies don't really tend to stay silent for long and all sorts of materials are ejected from their little bodies. But do you think the answer, therefore, is encouraging more women to work from home? Or is it actually about making sure that offices and workplaces have facilities like creches or rooms where women can go to breastfeed, or if their child's crying, that they can attend to the baby? Because there are people out there who say, oh, well, if you're looking after the baby, you're not really doing your job properly.
It's all of those things. The fundamental key thing that we need is affordable, good quality childcare. We have the second most expensive childcare system in the world in the UK. A third of mothers pay more for their childcare than they pay for their mortgage. And that is forcing mothers out of the workforce, or it is forcing them to work fewer hours. In fact, 87% of mums say that childcare has had an impact on their earnings and their progression at work. So we need to fix the childcare system. That's the most critical thing we need to do. We need to have ring-fenced, properly paid paternity leave so that the onus isn't on the mother to do all of the caring. At the moment, the system is set up so it is women that are taking maternity leave. Shared parental leave is a nonsense. It doesn't work. So we need much better paternity leave, and we need much better flexible working. There was a report out today by Flexappeal which showed that flexible working could have an economic benefit of £55 billion to the economy. Why on earth are we sticking with these rigorous structures of 9 to 5, telling people to come into the office when they don't have to? And we've just proved that during a pandemic. And yet we're seeing actually a reversal in flexible working. Fewer jobs are being advertised as flexible. Fewer jobs are offering home working. It makes absolutely no sense to anybody, to employees, to companies, to the economy.
Jolie, keep shouting loud. Maybe we'll get there one day. I wait with bated breath. That's Jolie Brearley, founder and CEO of Pregnant, Then Screwed. Quite. Still to come on the afternoon agenda, it's time to hear what you think about our big issue of the day, the family. Has the government forgotten to prioritise the sanctity of the traditional family? First, it's time for the news headlines.
Hello, I'm Tamsin Roberts. Here are the latest headlines. Prime Minister Boris Johnson will chair an emergency COBRA meeting after more than 20 people died trying to cross the Channel. The accident comes as British authorities continue to intercept a growing number of migrant boats. Recent figures show more than 25,700 people have reached the UK this year, 3 times more than all of 2020. 2 police officers who shared crime scene photos describing the victims as dead birds have been sacked. Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman were killed in northwest London in June last year. PC Jamie Lewis and Dennis Jaffa, who strayed from the cordon to take photos, admitted posting them on WhatsApp. A tribunal found them guilty of gross misconduct, describing their actions as shameful. Boris Johnson has defended his social care plan after Labour accused him of creating a working-class dementia tax. Earlier this week, the government voted through plans to change how contributions are calculated towards an £86,000 limit for social care. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the measures will impact the poorest people the hardest. And an extremely rare Christmas tree has been picked for Parliament. The outsized Sitka spruce, which reaches 42 feet, was selected from England's biggest forest. Kielder is one of the few places in the UK that can supply such tall trees. Even so, the chance of finding a tree this big is 1 in 150 million. That's all for now. I'll bring you a full news update at the top of the hour.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's believed around 20 migrants lost their lives after their boat sank in the Channel today. We can cross straight to Dover and GB News Home and Security editor Mark White. Mark, what's the latest?
Well, this is a tragedy that both the UK and French authorities had been warning was inevitable because of the model that the people smugglers have adopted of pushing these migrants out in small boats in increasingly adverse weather conditions to try to get across to the UK. We are, of course, approaching the winter months. It was a slightly calmer day in the Channel. It's never ideal, though, in the Channel. We've had a few days of windy weather, and it was still quite choppy when I was out there with Nigel Farage earlier today, and we came across a migrant boat that had been heading from Calais to the UK, 22 people on board, Iraqis and Iranians. The rescue services came and picked them up. But further towards Calais, another event was unfolding, very tragic and very significant, with the capsizing of another migrant boat. Now, the numbers have been varying throughout the last hour. It was initially thought that 5 people may have drowned. Then authorities have been quoted by French news agencies as saying 24 people have lost their lives. But the very latest from Natasha Bouchard, who is the mayor of Calais, is that 27 people have died. Now, if that is true, once all of the details are known, then that is just an incredible loss of life, a terrible tragedy. As I say, something that Priti Patel in particular had warned about as she tried over many occasions to get that message across that it was not worth making this perilous journey, that you could well be putting your lives at risk. Now, the Home Secretary, I understand, is going to be involved in a COBRA meeting. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has called that urgent crisis cabinet meeting, COBRA, to talk about the events that are still unfolding in the Channel off the French coast. It is not just a French maritime operation. The British are involved with border force and other maritime assets that have been sent to help in what is still a search and rescue operation for anyone else in the water, although I have to say, this long in the water, the chances of anyone really surviving are remote, to say the least. We saw with the boat that came across into British waters earlier with Nigel Farage and myself speaking to those on board. They held up a young child, said that that child had succumbed to the cold. They required emergency assistance. I mean, they were clearly cold, but they also know that the people smugglers have told them that when you come into UK waters, you tell the rescue services that you're taking on water, that someone has fallen in the water, that people are suffering from hypothermia, to ensure that the lifeboat, the border force, that the Coast Guard helicopter come out and pick you up and take you to the UK. Well, of course, this incident unfolding off Calais, they never got the chance to phone anybody. They never made it to British waters. The weather conditions ensured, and perhaps the fact that this boat may well have been overcrowded. The one we saw today was certainly packed to the gunwales. It may well have been overcrowded if we're talking about 27 people who the Mayor of Calais believes to have died, and still search and rescue underway this evening to try and find any other people that may have been pushed into the water.
Mark, thank you for the update there. NASA has launched a spacecraft to try and crash into an asteroid in a bid to change its course. The target isn't a threat, but scientists hope if it's successful, they'll learn things that will help them stop hazardous asteroids in the future. The collision is looking to change the speed of the asteroid and therefore change its trajectory. The spacecraft is due to meet the asteroid next September. Well, joining me now is spaceflight and astronomy commentator Andrew Lound. This sounds like the stuff of science fiction, Andy, but how at risk are we from imminent apocalypse due to an asteroid?
Good evening. Not necessarily imminent, but it could be recent. It could be in the near future. I mean, the Earth will be hit again by a major asteroid. I mean, the dinosaurs, it's thought, were led to extinction by the huge impact 60-odd million years ago. And large impacts like that do hit the Earth every 100 million years or so. A large one exploded over Tunguska in 1908, flattening thousands of square miles of forest. Had that exploded over a populated area such as Belgium, France, or even over London, then it would have been devastation. It would have been unbelievable. So the threat is really there, but we're very lucky. We've got quite a dense atmosphere and we have the moon to try and protect us. But sooner or later it is going to happen, and therefore this kind of mission is really important to see just how much we can change the trajectory of a planetary body. And it's quite fantastic. Hollywood does it in a fantastic fashion with Bruce Willis using nuclear weapons, which I'm afraid isn't really very practical, because all you do then is smash one giant problem up into thousands of other littler problems, which could be an issue. But we still need to have advance notice. And that's why this mission is so important. They're flying to the double asteroid Didymos and Dimorphos, its little moon, is going to be hit by the spacecraft. And that's going to actually slow it down. I mean, it's going to have an effect of slowing it down by 0.4 millimeters per second. Now, I know that doesn't sound very much, but over a period of time, that will actually change its orbit about its primary asteroid by about 10 centimetres, which is actually quite a lot. That's quite a big change. Now, if an asteroid was heading towards us, and say we've got a number of years' notice and we do such a thing, there'll be the difference between the asteroid either hitting the Earth or missing us by thousands of kilometres. So it is a big deal as long as we've got enough notice. And that's why this is an important mission. This is going to test to see if we can get the physics right, if what we can do would be practicable, and it could protect our species for the future.
Is there any risk that this could somehow go wrong and that the collision ends up in a load of space junk showering the Earth with debris?
No. This object's going to be over 6 million miles away. The spacecraft is very small. It's only about 500 kilograms, was it? 1,000 pounds in weight. Size of a washing machine. I think they've been touting around the system. If that smashes into it, it'll just break into little bits and pieces. It'll be very much of it will be vaporized actually, and the energy will be absorbed by little dimorphos, and that's the absorption we want because that will change its trajectory. Hopefully, there's no threat to us at all in this particular case, fortunately.
Now, you've spoken about the need for early detection with these things, which makes sense. If this technology appears to work, are we then going to go through an audit, if you will, of asteroids and figure out which ones we need to blast off course?
That's a very good point you've made. Yes, and one of the things that organisations are doing around the world at the moment is tracking near-Earth objects, NEOs. These are the objects that cross the orbit of the Earth as it goes around the sun. And these are the potential threats, because sooner or later, one of these objects is going to be in exactly the same place as Earth's orbit and then becomes a potential risk. Fortunately, in many cases, things collide with the Moon, which is very good, or the Moon's gravity deflects them away. But we will be conducting an audit, and it's a continuous programme. And satellite is going to be launched very soon as well to have a look at objects which come towards us from the sunward side, because at present, if an object comes from the sunward side, we can't actually detect it from the Earth, which is a real problem. And that has actually happened. A few weeks ago, an object passed in between the Earth and the Moon, which came from that direction. And if we're only given a couple of weeks' notice, then I'm afraid it's time to pick up the phone to Bruce Willis, because we can't use this technique for that. We would need such a large mass to deflect it. We're not going to be able to do that. So, yes, we need to do an audit. We need to monitor these objects on a regular basis to see their potential positions, and then we could potentially do something about it.
That seems unlikely. As you said, this is millions of miles away. But is there any chance of us mere mortals on Earth being able to actually see this experiment?
No, not from down here. There'll be some experiments being carried out on the ground. Well, they try to observe from the ground, and we've got space telescopes too, various wavelength telescopes. There is a small satellite which will leave the spacecraft. A small little box satellite, and that will try to do some observations there. And in a few years' time, the European Space Agency's Hera spacecraft will actually fly towards Didymos, and its aim there is to make observations then to see how much of a change we have made to dimorphos, to see how well that's actually been done. But ground-based orbital telescopes, the big ones, will be looking in that general direction to see what they can do. And of course, we'll hopefully, when Hera gets there, be able to give us some really hardcore data. But nobody needs to go out in their gardens and have a look, because you're not going to see anything, I'm afraid.
Oh, shucks. Andy, thanks so much. Fascinating stuff.
Thanks.
Now, after several years of trying, racing driver Mike Conway can now call himself a double world champion after successfully defending his World Endurance Championship title. The 38-year-old has also won Le Mans this season with his Toyota team. Like Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton, Conway started racing in go-karts and was British junior champion in 1998. He's also raced in the IndyCar Championship in America in 2010. He broke his leg in a high-speed crash during the Indy 500. I'm delighted to be joined by the world champion himself, Mike Conway, who is in California. Mike, who is not there, is sadly probably having... Oh, no, he's back. We're having a right old day of tech today, aren't we, Mike? There you are. Hi, Mike. Glad you did manage to join us in the end. Congratulations. Thanks. What does it feel like to be a world champion once again?
Thank you. It feels good. Thanks for having me back on the show. Yeah, no, it feels good. I mean, it's been a long, hard season, and to, finish it off, obviously we're winning Le Mans earlier in the year, and then to finish it with the championship is really good. So it's been a rewarding season, let's say. So I'm happy boy at the moment.
Talk to us about how much hard work and preparation goes into this. I mean, I'm a big petrol head. I love motorsport, so I've got some idea of how hard racing drivers have to train to cope with G-force and losing, kilos of weight in water during races. What sort of strenuous routines do you have to go to be fighting fit for the sport?
Yeah, it's quite a lot of training. I mean, we do quite a lot at the factory in terms of simulator driving and all those things, preparing for each race. But I think each driver keeps pretty fit in terms of lots of endurance kind of training, lots of cycling. Me and my teammates are always out together doing, crazy hours on the bike and, lots of kind of fitness stuff, swimming, lots of gym work. So it's, constant battle. And sometimes we have many back-to-back weekends. So it's all about conserving your energy and just getting the timing right in between racing as well. So it's, it's a full-time job, but, I love it. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Now, again, as a motorsport enthusiast, I think I'm confident in saying that Britain really is a leading light in this particular sport. But why do you think that races like Le Mans don't get as much publicity over here?
Well, I think British people are huge fans of sports cars, especially Le Mans, especially when you go to that race, you've got thousands of cars that travel down from England. And if you drive from the UK, I've done a few times, you just come across English cars the whole way down or through France. So it's a big sport I think a lot of British fans are into. I guess it's more nowadays, the social media side, TV, which kind of brings it all together. But it's a big sport and it's growing. Over the next few years, we've got more and more manufacturers coming in. So I think it's going to really raise the platform of the series. And it's glad to be part of it at the moment.
What are your ambitions for 2022? Do you want to win Le Mans again? Are there more World Championships? Are you eyeing up other formulas or categories?
Definitely to try and retain the championship again. 3 times in a row would be nice. And obviously Le Mans, it's been so many years trying to win that race, and to do it again would be amazing. So that's the goal, to keep on winning. It doesn't get any easier, that's for sure. Once you get it, you just got to work that bit harder and harder to try and retain it. So, but I'm up for the challenge, and so are my teammates, and we're looking forward to try and retain again.
Now, I can't let you go before asking for your prediction on the Formula One World Championship this year. It's been one of the most incredible seasons we've seen in motorsport, and I think the title's going to go right down to the final race. If you had to call it Lewis or Max?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm rooting for Lewis just because, big fan of Lewis, and we raced together, years ago. So, I think if he comes back and claws back and wins it, he'd really deserve it. But also Max has been phenomenal this year as well. So either way, it's going to be a great show, and hopefully it goes down to the last race and the last few laps. That'll make it exciting for everyone.
Mike, brilliant to talk to you again. We'll always have you on my show. Any excuse to talk about motorsport. That's the absolute racing legend, British hero Mike Conway, who's 2021 FIA World Endurance Champion and winner of Le Mans. What an incredible feat. Now, today on the afternoon agenda, we've been talking about the family, and I've been joined by some excellent guests. Head of Family Policy at the Centre for Social Justice, Christina O'Done, spoke about the reluctance to embrace family values within the government.
So why the reluctance? Well, the reluctance is they don't want to look like John Major's family values government, which did smack of hypocrisy because so many of the ministers were caught with their pants down whilst they were spouting family values. But the country as a whole is ready to hear about families and also to hear about marriage. I think that what we are seeing, especially since lockdown locked us in with our families and with our parents and with our children, what we're seeing is a resurgence of faith in the married structure.
Research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, Dr. Rakib Ehsan, outlined his problems with current government policy.
I think that firstly, when we're looking at our social policy discussions, Alex, it's far too racialized. And all too often when equality and discrimination is discussed, there's a great deal of focus on racial identity. But when you're looking at various forms of social and economic disadvantage, family structure is almost left by the wayside. It's seen as unfashionable to talk about. For some people, they would rather focus on race, gender, when looking at those forms of disadvantage. And unfortunately, if people are looking at the Conservative Party, the current day Conservative Party, to restore the family unit at the heart of social policy, I think they'll be left bitterly disappointed.
Well, now that we've heard what our guests have had to say, it is, of course, time for you, the viewer, to have the final word. Rax says, this drives me wild. The government are not responsible. Individuals need to take responsibility for themselves, their actions and their children. We have far too much support and have become unable to cope with basics as a result. We do not need more nannying by the state. Frank says this is another area where the Conservatives have allowed themselves over decades to be dominated by the left and its nihilistic thinking. Chris says this socially liberal government and society has been in the process of not only forgetting the family, but destroying so much else too. Joe says they've forgotten to prioritise anything that the British public want. Ollie says they've chosen not to prioritise the Brits that put them in power. Martin says women have been conned, being told they can have a career and children. Women have always been the mainstay of families. John says, I tell you what happened to the family. Women wanted to get out and are not interested in caring for a family anymore. Oh, come on. Women's rights, that's where the problem is. Women. Oh, do you know what? You, my friend, are wrong. Charles says men are often guilty of leaving the family home and refusing to financially compensate. Well, I could agree with that one. Thanks for all your views today. It's been a pleasure doing this show, extremely important in my opinion. We've also had a Twitter poll up, as per usual, and we've been asking, has the government forgotten to prioritise the family? 83% of you say yes, so I'm relieved to hear that. Clearly, there's a lot more to be done. It's 2021, and surely it's about time that all children deserve to be brought up in a safe and secure environment. You've been watching The Afternoon Agenda with me, Alex Phillips. Join me again from tomorrow from 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. Coming up next, of course, it's Michelle Dewberry with Dubes & Co. Do stay tuned in and have a glorious evening. Bye-bye.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good evening. A cold feel tomorrow, but generally a sunny day. Come Friday and Saturday, however, we're in for much livelier weather. Very strong winds and some wet weather too. An area of low pressure is going to bring some snow showers through the night across northern Scotland, and actually here already turning very, very windy, those isobars squeezing together. For England and Wales at the moment, we've got this weather front sinking south. That's providing a lot of cloud and some drizzly conditions over the Midlands, South Wales and southwest England through the evening. A bit of patchy rain later tonight for East Anglia and the southeast. But behind that, clearer skies will bring a chill first thing. Temperatures down to 2 or 3 degrees. That's in towns and cities. Add on that wind and it really will feel pretty raw on Thursday morning. But generally it's a fine and sunny start. Now through the day tomorrow there will be some showers grazing the east coast of England, at times Pembrokeshire, Cornwall too, the eastern side of Northern Ireland. The showers in northern Scotland falling as snow over the hills, hail likely down to lower levels, and the wind slowly easing here, but nevertheless a cold wind blowing for much of the day. Temperatures only 6 or 7 for most places. Add on that wind, it feels even colder. Things turning pretty cold pretty quickly on Thursday evening, but up to the north we're going to see wet weather pushing in. Some snow on the hills, and this zone of rain will slip its way steadily southwards during Friday. A lot of cloud around, outbreaks of rain and increasingly windy. And increasingly the showers turning back to snow over northern Scotland. So a cause for concern as this weather turns very lively through Friday and Saturday. Low pressure heading through the North Sea. Look at those isobars pinching together. A Met Office wind warning in place across northern Britain on Friday, and more widely across the UK on Saturday. Gusts of wind 50-60 miles an hour inland. Stronger than that on the coast. Could cause some disruption. If you're travelling on Friday or Saturday, keep up to date with the forecast.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Coming up Wednesday on Dan Wootton Tonight. Is the migrant crisis now a national emergency? We'll debate in The Clash and get your verdict. After that bombshell BBC documentary, Robert Jobson joins me to discuss our royal headlines that were exposing infighting in the firm, plus where the monarchy goes from here. Will Boris be able to hold on in number 10? Will Trump return to the White House? Celebrity psychic Sally Morgan predicts the future of the world's most notable figures. Plus, Brendan O'Neill and Rod Liddle sound off on the week's biggest talking points, and I'll bring you a first look at the front pages with my superstar panel. The Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platel, the Conservative commentator Albi Amankona, and the Royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. That's Dan Wootton tonight, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Monday to Thursday on GB News.